The most dangerous lie about the ocean is that the deep is empty. Challenger Deep, 11 degree 22.4 foot N, 142 degree 35.5 E, Western Pacific Ocean, 340 kilometers southwest of Guam, descends to 10,935 meters below sea level. It has been occupied by living organisms for 180 million years without interruption, without sunlight, and without anything resembling the conditions that define life as humans understand it. Every documentary you have ever watched about the ocean stopped before reaching this place. Every nature film cut away before the light disappeared. What you are about to see has been witnessed by fewer humans than have walked on the surface of the moon. The geometry alone resists comprehension. Mount Everest, at 8,849 meters, would fit inside Challenger Deep with 2,086 meters of open water above its summit. The entire Mariana Trench system stretches 2,540 kilometers in length, longer than the continental United States from coast to coast, formed by the Pacific Plate subducting beneath the Philippine Plate at 6 to 8 centimeters per year across 180 million years of continuous geological violence. The result? The deepest wound in the surface of the Earth, and one of the least understood places on this planet. To exist at the floor of Challenger Deep without protection is to encounter every physical limit of biology simultaneously. Pressure at 10,935 meters reaches 1,086 atmospheres, 15,939 pounds pressing on every square inch of every surface. A steel vessel with walls thinner than 38 millimeters implodes instantly. Water temperature at the floor holds at 1.8 degrees Celsius, cold enough to reduce enzymatic function in unprotected tissue to near zero, yet not freezing, because pressure suppresses the freezing point below the temperature of the water itself. The water in this column has not circulated to the ocean surface in an estimated 600 to 1,000 years. It predates the printing press. It was last at the surface before Columbus crossed the Atlantic. And the darkness. No photon of natural sunlight has ever reached the floor of Challenger Deep. In 180 million years of this trench's existence, not a single ray of light has touched that sediment. The diatomaceous ooze covering it, pale gray sediment up to 30 meters thick, the accumulated silica shells of dead surface phytoplankton raining downward for millions of years, has never been illuminated by anything except the bioluminescence of the creatures moving across it. When the first human-made light reached that floor in 1960, aboard the bathyscaphe Trieste, it was the first light of any kind to reach that sediment since before the age of dinosaurs. What the instruments recorded on that first descent, and what every expedition since has confirmed, is this: the floor is not empty. It is alive. Hirandelia gigas amphipods exist at densities approaching 100 individuals per square meter. Polychaeta bristle worms extend iridescent appendages through the ooze. Foraminifera carpet every basalt surface. The entire hadal ecosystem functions on marine snow, the continuous fall of organic particles from the sunlit surface, sinking for 6 to 8 weeks before arriving at the floor. A food chain powered entirely by the death of organisms 10,935 meters above. What you have not been told is what the instruments found that no model predicted. What the sonar recorded that no textbook had prepared the scientists for. There is an organism living at this depth that has evolved a biochemical solution to pressure so precise, so elegant, and so unexpected that when scientists first identified it, they initially refused to believe the data. That solution exists in every cell of every animal at this floor, and an almost identical version of the same molecule exists in the human brain right now.
Keep the tension steady on the starboard line.
The first scientific expedition to measure Challenger Deep was not looking for the deepest place on Earth. HMS Challenger, a British Royal Navy corvette converted for oceanographic research, was conducting a global survey when, on March 23, 1875, its hemp-sounding line reached 8,184 meters before going slack. The crew recorded the deepest measurement ever taken. They were wrong about the exact depth. It would take another century of technology to measure 10,935 meters, but they had found the place. They recorded a number, named it after their ship, and moved on. It would be 85 years before any human object reached the floor. The bathyscaphe Trieste made the first descent on January 23, 1960. Jacques Picard and Don Walsh. Time on the bottom, 20 minutes. The two men radioed a single message to the surface. Depth 37,800 feet. Everything okay. The ocean's deepest point had been reached by two humans in a steel sphere with 12.7 centimeter walls and a viewport barely larger than a dinner plate. What those 20 minutes of direct observation established: and what 65 years of robotic expeditions have since confirmed, is that the floor of Challenger Deep is one of the most structured, layered, and chemically complex environments on this planet. The CTD profiles reveal a water column in 4 distinct thermal layers. The warm surface mixed layer, the main thermocline dropping from 28 to 4 degrees Celsius across 1,000 meters, the near isothermal deep water layer holding at approximately 2 degrees from 1,200 to 8,000 meters, and the hadal layer maintaining 1.8 degrees with a measurable geothermal gradient from the floor upward. The oxygen minimum zone at 400 to 900 meters depletes dissolved oxygen to levels fatal to shallow water species. The Antarctic bottom water infiltrating below 9,000 meters carries elevated oxygen from its Antarctic formation site. The water in this column was last at the surface before European civilization built its first cathedrals. The discovery that changed oceanography permanently was not a creature. It was a chemical. When Jamieson and colleagues published in 2017 that PCBs, industrial pollutants from factories active between 1930 and 1979, were present in Hirandelia gigas fat tissue at concentrations 50 times higher than in severely polluted surface rivers, the scientific community confronted a conclusion it had avoided. The deepest place on Earth is not isolated from human activity. The marine snow that carries organic carbon from the surface to the floor carries everything the surface world produces. The trench is not a wilderness. It is a recipient. The JAMSTEC KAIKO ROV, deployed in 1995, confirmed 10,911 meters and collected the first biological samples from the floor. Its data, combined with expeditions from Scripps, Schmidt Ocean Institute, and Bari across 3 decades, built a composite picture of a place that operates by rules the surface world does not use. The biological community here is not a reduced version of shallower ecosystems. It is a distinct, fully functioning system shaped entirely by pressure, darkness, and the chemistry of what falls from 10,935 meters above. What the instruments have not yet mapped is the full vertical migration behavior of the mesopelagic zone directly above Challenger Deep, a daily biological pump moving billions of organisms between 200 and 1,000 meters, cycling carbon downward at a scale that affects global climate models. Research already underway at JAMSTEC and Bari targets this zone specifically. But the more urgent question is what was recorded in the classified acoustic record in 1968. A signal from this location that does not match any known biological or geological source, recorded for 37 minutes and never explained in 58 years of investigation. The ocean does not distinguish between what humans send across it deliberately and what it simply receives. It applies the same physics to a research lander and to a warship. The same pressure, the same darkness, the same indifference. The Mariana Trench region has received human objects since the first outrigger canoes of the Chamorro people crossed its surface more than 3,500 years ago. It has kept most of what fell. The documented losses are only the ones that were documented. The Battle of the Philippine Sea on June 19, 1944, fought directly over and adjacent to the trench system, saw 346 Japanese aircraft destroyed in a single day. A significant proportion entered the Pacific above a water column that descends 10,935 meters. The Bari 2016 AUV survey found aluminum framing on the upper trench slope at 800 to 1,100 meters, consistent with World War II-era aircraft construction, alongside a Grumman F-6F Hellcat fighter at 920 meters. Canopy open, pilot absent, altimeter reading 0, compass frozen at its last heading. No name. No record. The trench received them. The documentation ended. The MV Derbyshire, 294 meters, 44 people aboard, the largest British vessel ever lost, disappeared in Typhoon Orchid on September 9, 1980, in the Philippine Sea 700 kilometers north of the Mariana Trench. No distress signal. When investigators located the wreck in 1994 at 4,200 meters, the forward cargo hatch was missing, evidence of a single wave estimated at 23 meters that covers rated for 8.3 meters could not survive. Progressive flooding in seas the ship was certified to withstand. The ocean returned nothing. A 2,000 government compensation payment closed the official file. The wreck remains at 4,200 meters. The USS Scorpion, 99 men nuclear submarine, lost May 1968 at 3,048 meters, was found by the same acoustic localization techniques later applied to map Challenger Deep. The hull failure was instantaneous. 302 atmospheres of seawater entered the pressure hull in 0.003 seconds. The crew lost consciousness before the event registered in their nervous systems. The inquiry remains technically open. The JAMSTEC KAIKO ROV, the most capable deep ocean vehicle of its era, survived 8 descents to 10,911 meters and was lost not at depth but at the surface, a typhoon severing its tether in May 2003. The ocean that the KAIKO had survived at 1,086 atmospheres took it at 1 atmosphere, in a storm, in conditions that humans have always known were dangerous. And in 1968, SOSUS operators at Pearl Harbor watched a 37-minute acoustic anomaly print from the bearing of the Mariana Trench. 18 Hz, amplitude modulated, 0.8 second pulse cycle. Not geological. Not any known biological species. Classified for 34 years, acknowledged without explanation in declassified materials in 2002. Handwritten notation on the spectrograph, unclassified source, origin Mariana, unresolved. The signal has not been recorded since. The ocean produced it once from the direction of the deepest place on Earth and stopped. Every loss documented in this region teaches the same lesson. The water column from surface to floor is one continuous environment. The danger is not only at the bottom. And the things this ocean has received, the aircraft, the submarines, the vessels, the chemicals, the signals, exist in the same column of water as the Hirandelia gigas colony on the floor. The trench does not compartmentalize. It integrates everything. The pilot's bones at 920 meters and the amphipod colony at 10,935 meters share the same water. That water has not been to the surface since before the Battle of the Philippine Sea was fought above it. It remembers everything. It explains nothing. The floor of Challenger Deep has been visited by human instruments on fewer than 40 separate occasions in the 65 years since Trieste first touched it. In the same period, the surface of the Moon has received more systematic scientific attention. The reason is not a lack of interest. It is physics. At 1,086 atmospheres, there is no retrieval of a failed instrument. What descends and does not return is gone. The science that has been done here has therefore been done slowly, expensively, and with extraordinary precision, and it has broken the models at every level of investigation without exception. The first model it broke was geological. The 1875 HMS Challenger sounding predicted a simple depression in the oceanic crust. The 2011 Scripps Institution multi-beam survey revealed 3 distinct basins: the Western Pool at 10,935 meters, the Central Pool at 10,822 meters, and the Eastern Pool at 10,779 meters, separated by saddle ridges. The geometry of the deepest place on Earth is more complex than a century of measurements had captured. The Western Pool's greater depth accumulates more marine snow carbon, supporting higher biological density than the other pools. Geology determining biology at the extremes of the planet. The second model it broke was biological. The theoretical maximum depth for vertebrate fish, calculated from TMAO biochemistry, is 8,200 meters plus or minus 200 meters. Below that depth, the concentration of pressure-stabilizing molecules required exceeds the concentration at which those same molecules begin to destabilize protein function. There is a hard biochemical ceiling. The floor of the Western Pool is 2,757 meters below the last possible fish. That floor belongs to organisms that solve the pressure problem through entirely different strategies. Bacteria whose ribosomes have been re-engineered by evolution through 14 specific amino acid substitutions to function at pressures that destroy ribosomes everywhere else on Earth. The third model it broke was chemical. The primary energy source for the microbial community at 10,935 meters is not the organic carbon in marine snow, as all previous models assumed, but hydrogen gas produced by serpentinization reactions in the subducting basalt beneath the floor. The bacteria at the deepest point on Earth eat the chemical output of the Earth's tectonic engine. The food web closes in a geological loop connecting the living community directly to the plate tectonic process that created the trench. The geology and the biology are the same system. There is no separation. The fourth model it broke was isolation. PCBs in amphipod tissue at concentrations 50 times higher than the most polluted surface rivers. Microplastics at 2,200 particles per liter of Hadal water. A 1963 nuclear fallout layer at 15 millimeters depth in the sediment, preserved as precisely as in any coastal archive. Pharmaceutical compounds in amphipod fat tissue from medications people took on land decades ago. Challenger Deep is not remote from human civilization. It is a recipient of it, connected through the same marine snow mechanism that has carried biological carbon to this floor for 180 million years, now carrying everything else we produce alongside it. What no model has yet explained is why the bacterial community at 10,935 meters consumes oxygen at the same rate as coastal sediment communities with vastly greater food supply. 3 institutions are working on the missing carbon source simultaneously. The 200 meters of sediment below the deepest core ever taken here, representing 20 million years of Pacific biological record, has never been reached by any instrument. And within that unsampled column, at some depth that no one has yet calculated, there may be organisms that have been metabolically active in complete isolation since before the first human ancestor stood upright on the African savanna. The bioluminescent flash in the absolute darkness of Challenger Deep lasted 0.3 seconds. It was blue-green, 476 nanometers. It came from something that was present in the complete dark before the LED arrays were turned on, and will be present in the complete dark after every instrument that came here has returned to the surface. The organism that produced it has not been identified. This is not a failure of the science. It is the current condition of the science. The floor of Challenger Deep, observed in full biological detail during perhaps 200 hours of total accumulated illuminated time across all expeditions, has in those 200 hours yielded 4 confirmed undescribed species in a single 21-day camera deployment, an acoustic return at 5,800 meters of a biological target 1.8 to 2.4 meters long that no camera has yet resolved, and a bioluminescent flash from an organism that exists, moves and produces light in a place that has never received natural light in 180 million years. The species inventory of the Hadal zone globally is estimated at 80% incomplete. For in every 5 species that live below 6,000 meters have not been described. They have not been named. They exist in the absence of human knowledge of them. They have existed in that absence since long before the concept of biological taxonomy was invented. Environmental DNA analysis of 10-liter water samples from Challenger Deep has detected the genetic signatures of 12 organisms that match nothing in any sequence database on Earth. Not unidentified because of poor data quality. Unidentified because the organisms they represent have never been described by science. They shed their DNA into water that human instruments filtered. They themselves remain unseen. The Greenland shark in the water column above Challenger Deep, estimated at 280 to 320 years old based on radiocarbon dating of its eye-lens nuclei, was born before any human instrument entered any ocean at depth. It has moved through this water column across every expedition that has come here. It was present when KAIKO first touched the floor in 1995. It was present during the James Cameron descent in 2012. It moves at 1.1 kilometers per hour in complete darkness, using olfaction to navigate a water column it has known for 3 centuries. Its tissue contains isotope records, parasite histories and chemical gradients from the PCB contamination and the 1963 nuclear fallout layer, data that could answer questions the instruments have not yet thought to ask. No instrument has sampled a living Greenland shark at depth in this water column. It remains unsampled, uncollected, and 3 centuries old. The female Hirondelia gigas carrying eggs at 10,935 meters is the most important organism this documentation encountered. Not because she is unusual, because she is not. She is doing what Hirondelia gigas has done at this depth for approximately 3 million years. She does not know that the PCBs in her fat tissue are from a factory in Ohio that closed in 1979. She does not know that the temperature of the Antarctic bottom water above her is increasing at 0.03 degrees per decade. She does not know that in 65 million years Challenger Deep will cease to exist as the Pacific plate completes its subduction. She knows the chemical gradient of this morning's marine snow pulse. She knows the direction of the 0.1 kilometer per hour current. She knows the sediment surface. Her knowledge of this place exceeds the combined output of every instrument that has ever been deployed here. The 18 Hz signal recorded for 37 minutes in 1968 and unexplained in 58 years of investigation is the question this place will not answer on demand. It was recorded. It is in the declassified record. It overlaps in frequency with tectonic infrasound, with large cetacean vocalizations, and with no known species confirmed acoustic signature simultaneously. It has not been recorded again. The ocean produced it once, from the direction of the deepest place on Earth, and then silence. There are organisms alive right now at 10,935 meters whose entire species has never been seen by human eyes, and the only reason we know they exist at all is because a water filter caught the molecules their bodies shed as they moved through the dark. The ocean floor at 10,935 meters does not know it has been documented. The Hirandelia gigas colony that appeared across this film did not alter its behavior in response to the light. The female carrying eggs continued her route across the sediment after the camera departed, following the same chemosensory gradient she would have followed if no instrument had ever come here. The tectonic pulse continued before the first instrument arrived, through every expedition, and will continue after the last instrument's battery fails and the relay buoy is recovered and the scientists retire and the institutions publish their final papers. The deep does not require documentation. The documentation is for us. The reckoning this place demands has three components. The first, the contamination. PCBs at 2,340 nanograms per gram in amphipod tissue. Microplastics at 2,200 particles per liter at 10,935 meters. Pharmaceuticals in the fat tissue of animals that have never left the hadal floor. The 1963 nuclear fallout layer at 15 millimeters depth in the sediment. These are not accidental. They are the precise chemical record of mid-20th century industrial civilization, concentrated at the deepest point on Earth by the same marine snow mechanism that has concentrated organic carbon here since the trench formed. The ocean does not distinguish between the carbon that feeds the amphipods and the carbon-based contaminants that arrived with it. It concentrates everything. The floor receives everything the surface discards. The second, the knowledge gap. 80% of hadal species remain undescribed. The 2-meter sediment core that would retrieve a 200,000-year climate record has not been taken. The Edna contains 12 genetic signatures matching nothing in any database. The 18 Hz signal from 1968 has no explanation. The annual global investment in hadal research is 55 times smaller than the annual investment in Mars exploration, while Mars is 7 months away and Challenger Deep is 3.2 hours of descent. The unknown at 10,935 meters is not a consequence of the difficulty of access. It is a consequence of choices about where to direct human attention and human resources. The third component is the most difficult to state. The deepest place on Earth existed for 180 million years before any human instrument reached it. The organisms there are adapted to conditions the human species has never experienced and never will without technological mediation. The tectonic system that created Challenger Deep will continue for 65 million years after the last human instrument has failed and corroded and been integrated into the sediment column alongside the candy wrappers and the rubber sandal sole. The place does not need our attention to exist. It does not need our protection to function. It has operated in complete isolation from everything humans have ever built, at full biological capacity, since before our species existed. What we owe it is not stewardship. What we owe it is honesty about what we have already put into it without asking, and what we are still putting in with every marine snow particle that descends from a surface we continue to fill with things that do not belong there. The science is not finished. The 200 hours of total human observation at this floor represents 0.00000000044% of the total duration of this place's existence. The bacteria in the sediment below the deepest core ever taken, metabolically active, genetically isolated, operating on hydrogen from the Earth's tectonic engine, have been there in the dark for longer than our species has used language. And somewhere in the 20 million years of unsampled sediment below the current instrument reach, the record of every Pacific Ocean the Earth has produced is preserved in perfect, undisturbed, dark silence. Whether any future instrument ever reaches it depends entirely on whether anyone decides that the deepest place on Earth is worth knowing completely, not just the 6 centimeters we have managed so far, but all of it, down to the basalt, down to the truth of what this planet has been doing in the dark while we were looking somewhere else.